Good morning. Happy MPA Monday. Good morning, good morning. Happy MPA Monday. We got kind of a gloomy day on us today here in Morro Bay. Good morning, everyone. Happy MPA Monday. Look at these skies. Super cloudy. A little chilly. Good morning, Jacob. Good morning, Kathy. It is a beautiful day in Morro Bay. Cloudy, sunshine. It's beautiful either way. Let's go ahead and flip this camera. You guys can see. Good morning, Jenny from San Diego. Probably not experiencing the same weather we are right now. Lots of birds in the sky right now. I don't know if you guys can see this. Lots of brown pelicans. Good morning, Melinda. Oh, and you have your second and third graders today. Good morning, students. Good morning, Bernice. Good morning, Sue. Stuck in that humid New Jersey weather. Good morning, Robert. These pelicans are so fun to watch. They look so small from here, but in reality, they're essentially baby dinosaurs. Let's see if I can zoom in even more. They have a 6-foot wingspan. So imagine someone, maybe yourself, you're 6 feet tall. These pelicans have a 6-foot wingspan. And they're actually the smallest of all the pelican species. I think there's about 6 or 7 different pelican species in the world. And this brown pelican is actually the smallest of all of them. In Morro Bay, we'll also get the white pelican. Beautiful big white birds with black tips on their wingtips. And they actually have a 10-foot wingspan. Lots of birds here in Morro Bay, but also at the Rock, which is where we're at today. Good morning, Jenny. Good morning, Anita. Oh, Jenny's got some heavy dew in San Diego. Used to live in San Diego. It is nice to have those dewy mornings. The students say hello. Good morning. I'm glad you guys could join in today. Jennifer Gruber with her Girl Scouts in Rancho Cucamonga. We got Sukari from Sacramento. Good morning, Janet, also from San Diego. Oh, and Bernice is with her mom, having me on the big screen today. That's always fun. So I'll go and flip the camera, introduce myself. Good morning, everyone. My name is Robin. I'm an interpreter with California State Parks. You can find me pretty much every Monday somewhere on the San Luis Obispo coast. That's anywhere from, got a pretty egret about to fly behind me. Might be able to see that just fading into the clouds. So that could be anywhere from Montana de Oro State Park, just south of us on the south end of Morro Bay, where I'm at right now. This water right here is all Morro Bay. Oh, we've got some peregrines actually. You heard that sound. That was actually the squawk of a peregrine falcon. There's a lot of wildlife out today, so I'm going to get extremely distracted. So feel free to pop in some questions at any point if you've got them. So that's just how this little tour is going to go. We've got pretty large flocks of pelicans above us. We've got peregrines nesting on this rock just here, flying by. We've also got otters bopping down into the water. Oh, we've got a sea lion way out there. I don't know if you can see that. We're actually going to walk over to a raft of sea otters in just a bit. You might be able to see some. There they are. Got some wrestling sea otters out there. That splashing you see, those are wrestling sea otters. Good morning, Dominique. Jenny's asking if we have otters all year long, and we actually do. Here in Morro Bay, we've got otters all year long. And sea otter mamas are actually always in some state of motherhood all year long. Got another sea otter floating right here. Don't worry, we'll get to some that are much closer to shore that you'll be able to see. Just want to give you a glance of where I'm currently standing though. So yeah, sea otter mamas are constantly in a state of motherhood, either about to give birth or caring for their young pups. Got another one a little bit closer right here. Lots of wildlife out today. Jennifer Gruber says, are there any seals? There are seals. So here in Morro Bay, we have harbor seals, which you typically don't see. So if you look just at this bit of water here, this channel actually is the only point at which Morro Bay, see another little otter right there, the only point at which the water exits out of Morro Bay. So this channel right here is the only place where it meets the Pacific Ocean. So this area right here is the first entrance point, really. This is if you're coming via boat or whatever it may be. This is where you'll first enter Morro Bay if you're coming from the Pacific Ocean. And then it actually curves around and heads that way. So you can see a bunch of sand right across from me. This is actually a sand spit. Funny name, but it's essentially a little peninsula. It's actually a really big peninsula. And it's primarily made of sand. You can see there's some vegetation on there as well. We've got some ice plant and sand verbena and whatnot on this peninsula. And in between this bit of sand here and what you can see just to the left of it, that's actually the town of Morro Bay. There's water that enters through that way, and that takes you to the rest of Morro Bay. And so at the very back end, which is much further back beyond that way, is where you'll actually see the harbor seals. And they'll just haul out on flats, mud flats, areas where it's a little bit shallower. They like to haul out there. And we also have California sea lions. So we have the sea lions, and we also have the seals. And the main difference, a lot of people aren't too familiar, but the main difference between a sea lion is that they actually have ear flaps, whereas a seal doesn't have any ear flaps. They essentially just have a hole for their ear. And they're what's known as a true seal. We've got both of them here, both the harbor seal as well as the California sea lion. And then up north, just a bit, actually within our same districts, oftentimes we'll see them on beaches north of us at her San Simeon State Park. Up at Piedras Blancas, we have the elephant seal, which is a much different animal, much bigger. They are considered a true seal as they don't have ear flaps. They also have a big nose. The males, especially the adult males, have a very large nose, hence the name elephant seal. And you typically will only see them in the winter months, so you can think of it as seeing them in the holidays. So anywhere between Thanksgiving and anywhere the very latest mid-March. So they've gone already for the year. They spend the majority of their lives actually out at sea, actually deep sea divers. But we don't see any elephant seals here in Morro Bay. Lots of other wildlife though. Melinda is asking, or sorry, Ray is asking, what type of otters live here? Good question. So here in California, we actually have the southern sea otter, also known as the California sea otter. So all the way, probably the southernmost that you'll really see sea otters. I mean, they've been known to be seen in San Diego. They definitely don't hang out there. Often it's not a common occurrence. And really past Point Conception. So anybody who's familiar with a map of California, Point Conception is near Vandenberg Air Force Base, the town of Lompoc, north of Santa Barbara. There's a large point there, a lot of animals. It's kind of a dividing line. It's actually a point where the water changes a little bit too. It's a little bit warmer south of Point Conception. So typically past Point Conception, we don't really see too many sea otters. Sarah's asking, do they ever have brown bears on the flats? I wonder, is it the mud flats you're asking about? We typically don't see bears too often here near the bay. There are bears here. We definitely have bears in the mountains and hills nearby, but we don't really see them near the water, especially at a populated place like this. Kathy's asking, then you have the squirrels, and I've not yet shown you, but there are several squirrels running around my feet. These squirrels are definitely not afraid of humans, which is a shame because they shouldn't be this habituated to humans. You can see they're almost in the begging position for food. So if you ever see these types of animals, I know it seems extremely innocent to feed them a peanut or a chip or something, but it's actually extremely dangerous for them because they can actually not learn how to forage for themselves. And that was actually something we had here at this very location. When COVID hit mid-March last year, this entire area was actually blocked off. This giant parking lot behind me. So you can see there's one way in. This car leaves. Just one way in here. Giant parking lot. And so this whole road was blocked off. And when that road was blocked off, these little squirrels here are very used to getting fed by visitors and families, just enjoying their time in Morro Bay. Again, it seems extremely innocent, but when that food source was cut off for them, there was actually a large increase in death of these animals because they don't know how to forage for themselves. They didn't know how to get their own food. So this goes for all wildlife, really. If you see an animal, looks like maybe they're begging for food or would like food, definitely don't give them food. It's really for their health and for yours as well, because these animals can get too close. They do have diseases. They can bite even. So keeping wildlife wild, extremely important. Talia would like to know if sharks come into the bay. Good question. So we've got lots of boat activity going on right here. So like I mentioned, this channel right here goes out into the Pacific Ocean. And the Pacific Ocean has salty water, right? Well, the water that's coming in to the bay from inland, so we have two creeks that actually come into Morro Bay, and these creeks are freshwater, so the type of water that we drink, right? So we have fresh water meeting salty water. It actually forms a mixture of both salty and fresh known as brackish water. And so the salinity, the amount of salt within this water changes. So oftentimes some animals will come into the bay here. Sometimes we'll see, you know, whale calves or sharks, sharks that are meant to be out in the Pacific Ocean, other animals that aren't used to the change in salinity, the change in the salt of the water. And so they'll actually enter into the bay, quickly realize they have some neat little way to figure out that, hey, this is not as salty as I'd like it, and they'll actually just turn right back out. Other sharks, though, we do have sharks that do live in the bay. So leopard sharks are sharks that you will see in the bay. It's actually a common place for leopard shark mamas to come and raise their young. So Morro Bay is often what's known as a nursery. Mother animals will come here to raise their young. Sea otters, we actually will keep walking this way towards that raft of sea otters because we actually might have some pups out there. So mother animals like to come here to Morro Bay because of the calm water, because they have the abundance of food. And so leopard sharks are one of them. You actually see them often towards the back end of the bay. There's actually a point, a little inlet called Shark Inlet. And oftentimes you'll see leopard sharks there. My favorite way to see leopard sharks is actually to do what this guy right here is doing. He's stand-up paddleboarding because you can look down into the water. So if you're stand-up paddleboarding in the bay, typically in the middle of the bay or maybe towards the back of the bay, you'll actually get to see some leopard sharks in the water, which is really cool. Give you a better shot of Morro Rock here. So regarding the bears on the mud flats to get the clams, yeah, typically we don't see, I haven't heard of any bears. I'll definitely ask around though, because that would be interesting to find out. But a lot of the mud flats that we have are formed during low tide. So typically it's in the middle, it's kind of like an island. It's the middle of the bay surrounded by water. Jenny's asking if you can hike around the rock. You can definitely walk from this point on the other side of the rock all the way around. You are walking through a parking lot, so it's not necessarily the best hike. On the other end, you can't access it because it's just those sheer cliffs right down into the Pacific Ocean. And you definitely can't hike on the rock. It's actually a sacred space for local groups here, the Northern Chumash and the Salinan. Alana wants to know if there are sea stars in Morro Bay. There are definitely sea stars, actually all below me here. You can see a bunch of rocks. And all along these rocks often, if you're careful where you're walking, and you walk along these rocks, you'll see all kinds of critters. Ochre sea stars, all different kinds of animals. Good question. And I love that she called them sea stars. I know oftentimes they're called starfish, which is actually not correct because they're not a fish, right? They don't look like fish. They're actually called sea stars. How was it formed? I'm assuming that's the rock. How was it formed? And that's a great question. So this right here was actually a volcano. So Morro Rock was once a volcano 26 million years ago. And this volcano, as we all know, right, volcanoes are filled with lava and magma, right? Hot lava and magma. And what happened to this volcano is a little tiny air vent formed within it, and it actually cooled down that lava and magma. Cooled it down so much that it solidified it. And so over time, this volcano that was much bigger before, the soil eroded away, the vegetation, the plants that were on it eroded away. And what we have left is this solid block of lava and magma. So this is what's known as a volcanic plug, because it plugged up a volcano. And it's 581 feet tall today. It was much bigger before. I'm not sure how much bigger, but it was once much bigger. And it's solid lava and magma, which is pretty cool. So this is a volcanic plug, and this is actually the furthest west. It's what's known as a Morro, and that actually leads me to the next question. How did Morro Rock get its name? Morro, I believe, means, and feel free to correct me if anybody knows, I believe it means nose. And so when you look at it from a distance, so we'll actually look at some other Morros just east of here. We've got some other Morros right here. They kind of look like noses just popping out of the earth. And there's actually a string of these Morros. They're what's known as the Nine Sisters. So this is the furthest west one we can see. I believe there's some further west, out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean under the water. So this is the furthest west one we can see. And we've got this guy right here. The next one just east. We've got Black Hill. There's Cerro Cabrillo just behind it. The rocky one just to the left of it, I believe that's Hollister. And they actually stretch all the way 12 miles east to the town of San Luis Obispo. And like I said, there's about 9 of them. So here's our little star crew here. This is a raft of sea otters. When you have a bunch of sea otters in a group, that's what's known as a raft. Let's see if we've got any pups. Oftentimes you'll hear some crying sounds. Quite literally sounds like a crying baby, because sea otter pups make pretty much the same sound. We've got some of this twirling activity that you can see. They're twirling in the water. You can see that they're kind of moving their fur around. This is actually a grooming behavior. So they have a lot of fur. They're actually the furriest creatures in the entire animal kingdom. And they've adapted to have so much fur because they don't have blubber. So most marine mammals that we're familiar with, right, seals, whales, they all have blubber. It's that thick layer of fat underneath their skin that keeps them warm. And mammals are warm-blooded like us. So if we go out in this water, for me, when I go out in this water, I'll wear a wetsuit, depending how deep I'm going, of course. If I'm just hanging out on the surface of the water, surfing or something, it might be a little bit thinner of a wetsuit. If I'm diving, it's going to be a much thicker wetsuit, like a 7 mil. And that's because I'm warm-blooded. I would absolutely freeze if I hung out in this water without anything on. So marine mammals typically have blubber to keep them warm because they're also warm-blooded. They're mammals as well, just from the ocean. But these little sea otters, unlike their sea otter, or unlike their marine mammal friends, they don't have blubber. So they've adapted to survive in this chilly ocean water by having so much fur. And by so much fur, I mean they actually have 1 million hairs per square inch. So go ahead and look at your hand right now, or something that might be a square inch, like the size of a postage stamp. It's about a square inch. And in that square inch, they have 1 million hairs. Absolutely bonkers. But It's a lot of work to be able to keep up that coat. Make sure that it's combed, and of course they're not using combs, but making sure that it's groomed well. There's no tangles, there's a nice air bubbles within that fur so that the cold water doesn't touch their warm skin. So they'll do this twirling behavior. They'll rub their paws around their entire body, their face, their neck, their paws. Got some other ones coming in here. And they groom for a long time. So every single day, they have to groom for about 2 to 4 hours. 2 to 4 hours. Let me know if you guys groom for 2 to 4 hours. Brush your teeth, wash your face. Probably not. But for these guys, it's necessary. It's actually essential. Let's see, we've got some more questions. Have you seen any osprey there this spring? I have, actually. Ospreys are really cool raptors. They're like a white-gray bird. They have a really high-pitched call, and they like to fish, so they'll often hang out near water. And I've seen them inland too. I've seen them even in Colorado before, near rivers. But we do have them here. Are the otters this active and close all day? It really depends. We do have otters all year round. It looks like we do have some pups, actually. Let's see if I can... We've got a mama right here trying to groom her pup. You can see that little tiny pup on her belly. She's trying to groom them because they cannot actually groom themselves. So these mother sea otters, they are super moms for sure. Like I said they're in a constant state of motherhood. You can see a little pup just separated here, just starting to swim on their own. And when they're really young, I believe like the first 3 months or so, they're actually extremely buoyant, so they can't dive down at all. And they can't groom themselves really. They're still kind of learning. They can't forage for themselves, obviously. If they're not able to dive down into the water, they can't get their own food because they're typically eating invertebrates. So anything that hangs out at the bottom of the ocean without a spine, like sea urchins, snails, clams, all of these critters don't have spines. And so they can't dive down to get them if they're that buoyant. They're just floating at the top. So these super moms are not only grooming themselves and trying to get enough food for themselves. And to give reference, these sea otter moms, adult sea otters, they need to eat about 25% of their body weight every single day, which is a lot. And so not only are they trying to do all this for themselves, but they got to take care of these little guys here. This little pup that's just, you can see they're doing some grooming behavior here, learning how to groom themselves, twirling in the water. You can see they rub their feet, or their paws rather. See if we've got any other little, oh, I just heard a little cry. Looks like we might have another sea otter pup somewhere. You can see all that stuff in the water here. Obviously the sea otters, but the little bits of plants. This is all kelp, so they're actually hanging out in a little kelp bed here, which is extremely helpful for them. The water's a little bit calmer here. The current's not flowing through it as quickly. And sometimes if the ocean current gets a little too rough, they can actually twirl themselves into the kelp. And just like a boat, anchors itself in a harbor or a marina, these sea otters can actually anchor themselves to the bottom of the ocean floor. And again, they're busy, right? They have to eat 25% of their body weight every day. They have to groom 2 to 4 hours every day. These busy moms are doing the same thing for their young little pups. So to be able to anchor themselves down and not have to worry about floating away with the ocean current is pretty ideal. So this kelp forest, this little bed here, is really important for these animals. See, this little pup's going for a ride. So we've got, looks like we might have another little pup over here somewhere. I did hear a cry not too long ago. Sometimes it's really hard to tell. They just kind of blend in together. You can actually see this guy right here. They've got their little paws sticking out of the water. And it looks kind of funny sometimes. People like to take pictures of them doing this. But it's actually extremely important for them with their paws out of the water. Like I said earlier, these are marine mammals, so they're warm-blooded just like us, living in this chilly ocean water. But unlike other marine mammals, they don't have blubber. They have to rely on their fur to keep them warm. So that's why they're constantly grooming. Their paws, however, don't have as much fur. And so it's a little bit more exposed to cold water. So by keeping, when they're sleeping, they're able to keep these paws out of the water. It helps to keep their body temperature a little bit higher. Got some more grooming behavior over here. Scrubbing their faces. Doing some somersaults. This helps to move the fur along. Again, they don't have combs, right? So twirling in the water helps to bring the fur more maintained. It's like a easy way of grooming. If you think about when you're in the shower or something, you're running that water over your hair. If you run it through backwards, for those of us with longer hair, if you are running that water through backwards, the back of your neck.
Is this the best time of year to see water babies?
You can see them all year round.
Oh,
all year round, yeah.
Just watching that mom struggle with her baby.
Yeah.
Flipping over. Baby's being ornery.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a little mother over here. You can see the mother. A lot of them will, pups will just sleep on their bellies. Right here we've got our mother who's grooming. Let's see if I can get a hold of her. There she is.
They're too cute.
Yeah. Lots of grooming behavior right now. Yeah, you can see the slapping of the face, moving that fur around, twirling around. Again, you can see those paws sticking out of the water. Again, this is to help regulate their temperature, making sure they don't get too cold. So something that you can imagine is that these sea otters are pretty busy, right? They're constantly, I mean these ones in particular, these mothers are constantly in a state of motherhood. They're having to groom 2 to 4 hours every single day. They're having to eat 25% of their body weight every single day. And if they have pups, they're having to do all of that for their pups as well. So something that's really important to remember is to really give them their space. So from shore here, it's much easier. You're able to give them quite a bit of space. But any disturbances whatsoever, anything too loud, where it could distract them or divert their energy elsewhere, can really be pretty detrimental to them. So you can imagine any water recreation, whether you're kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding, whatever it may be, you really want to be mindful of where they're at in the water, making sure not to get too close to them. You can imagine if a kayaker or a stand-up paddleboarder were to cruise right through the middle of them. I mean, some of these sea otters are asleep, some of them are grooming, all of which is extremely important to their survival. If they get disturbed by someone going right through this little raft, they have to start their behavior all over again. They're going to have to regroom themselves. They'll probably have to find more food to eat because they've just expended extra energy elsewhere. So another little note of encouragement, just to keep wildlife wild, allowing them to be, and really just enjoy them from a respectful distance like we are now. Because who doesn't want to see wildlife? Wildlife is amazing. It's so fun to watch. Got a little cormorant who just landed. Everybody loves to watch wildlife. And if we do so respectfully, we can make a really big difference in the survival of these animals. I know there's several questions that have come in that I haven't gotten to yet. Let's see, this was a bit ago. Do they twirl with their babies? I think you may have seen it already. But yes, they do twirl with their babies. We got this one right here, still grooming her little pup. They do twirl with their babies. This is all learning behavior too, right? So they're learning from their moms what to do. Otters are so cute and cuddly looking, but how close should humans get to them? That's a really good question. So we talked about trying not to disturb them, right? But how do you know when you're actually disturbing them? So these sea otters, a really good rule of thumb, if you're on a kayak, on a stand-up paddleboard, a really good rule of thumb is actually to stay about 5 kayak lengths away. So if you can envision yourself kayaking along, hanging out about 5 kayak lengths away is a pretty good distance. Another good rule of thumb is to make sure not to be perpendicular to them. So if you can paddle parallel. So if you can imagine we're in a kayak right now and we've got the point of the kayak pointing directly at them, that's going to seem like a threat to them. So if you turn that kayak this way and enjoy from the side view, just like this, I don't know if you can tell it all from the way I'm moving the camera, but if you paddle parallel, it's not seen as a threat, and they're much more likely to not be disturbed. Kathy says she'll be here in September to see them. Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, you can pretty much see them all year round. There's typically a raft that hangs out right here near Morro Rock. Another good spot to see them is actually more so in town, just across the way a bit. There's a spot known as the Tea Pier, and a lot of mothers like to hang out with their pups there because it's calmer water. It seems like it wouldn't be pleasurable to hang out there because oftentimes there's construction, it's near the harbor department, but for some reason they're okay with it. I could probably watch these little guys all day long. It looks like we've got, nope, that's not a pup. Just 2 adults grooming here. couple of nicknames for these guys. Some people will call them kelp grizzlies. They like to hang out in kelp. They kind of look like little grizzly bears, kind of. Another reason people call them kelp grizzlies is because they actually have a really strong jaw. So their jaw, I've heard, can be about as strong as the jaw of a pit bull. Another reason you don't want to get too close to them and just enjoy them from a respectful distance. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you had fun looking at the abundance of wildlife around us today. We've got to see some peregrine falcons, some brown pelicans, these southern sea otters, some ground squirrels, lots of different animals hanging out here at Morro Rock. And I didn't mention one thing about MPAs. So real quick, because it's Monday and that's why we're here, we talk about MPAs, which are marine protected areas. And what we're looking at is actually a marine protected area. So you can think of them much like underwater parks. They're just places in the ocean set aside for protection. So just like parks that we're familiar with, state parks, national parks, a park down the street from your house, these are all places that are set aside for us to recreate in, for wildlife to thrive. And for a long time, we didn't really have anything like that in the ocean until about 10 years ago when these MPAs were implemented in the state of California. We have 124 up and down the California coast, which actually makes up the largest network of marine protected areas in the world. So we're super lucky here in California to have our coastal resources protected. And by coastal resources, that's everything that lives on the coast, right? Even these sea otters here. So these sea otters, by hanging out in this MPA, this marine protected area, they're protected. Their habitat's protected. This kelp forest that they're hanging out is protected. So MPAs are pretty cool for several reasons. Not only to protect wildlife like these sea otters here, protect the food that they eat, protect the habitat that they live in, but also to allow spaces for us to thrive in. You can see the sea otters actually just draped some kelp on their face. Sorry, again, I'm distracted, but it's also a place for us to play, right? So we're allowed to kayak here. We're allowed to stand up paddle and dive. We're allowed to play in these outdoor spaces, all while remembering that it's not really our home, right? These are our wild neighbors. This is their home. And to just respect them. Just like you wouldn't want someone barging through your living room in the middle of dinner, someone you don't know, that would be pretty frightening. You would want them to maybe knock on the door first or do something a little bit more respectful. That's socially normal for humans. But for these wild neighbors, simple things to remember like paddling parallel, making sure not to make too many loud noises, of course not feeding them. We've got a little sea otter pup face here. See if I can find it. I don't know if you can see that very well. They just got covered, but there's a perfect shot of a little sea otter pup face. So simply just respecting their space, because these are hard-working animals. They've got a lot of things to do, and any extra energy expended being scared by humans or having to dive away can be pretty detrimental. So again, I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. I might have to come back here again next week because this is an extremely poppin' place right now. You can see, look at all these pelicans right now. Big old flock of pelicans just came through. So you can see there's lots of activity out here in Morro Bay. Lots of stuff going on. We've got people on the boardwalk, people in the water, lots of wildlife, lots of recreation. Morro Bay is often what's known as a disturbance hotspot even, because we have so much recreation and because we have so much wildlife. So that's why it's so important to simply just remember to respect wildlife. Respect their distance, respect their space. Looks like it might be clearing up a little bit. We've got some blue patches above us. So again, I want to thank you all so much before I get distracted again. Thank you all so much again for joining me here at Morro Rock in Morro Bay, California, at Morro Bay State Park. We got to see, again, lots of wildlife. We've got some sea otters behind me. Lots of birds nesting on the rock. We hardly even talked about that. So again, I might have to come back again at another point to talk about all of those birds resting and nesting on the rock. One of which is the peregrine falcon. And real quick fun fact, it's actually the fastest animal in the world, to my knowledge. Record speed was actually 242 miles per hour. So pretty fascinating. Beautiful day here in Morro Bay. Foggy, sunny, whatever it is. It's always a beautiful day here in Morro Bay. And I don't just come to Morro Bay, I go anywhere in our district. So anywhere from Montana de Oro State Park down to the south of us, as well as all the way up to essentially Big Sur. So just north of us at Piedras Blancas. We can go up there to the elephant seal rookery, which you won't see much of them right now. But lots of different wildlife here on the San Luis Obispo Coast District. So thank you all so much for joining me today. Again, my name is Robin with California State Parks. If you have any recommendations of where you'd like to go, what you'd like to see, go ahead and throw it in the comments below. Any questions you have as well, feel free to throw those down and I'll try to get to them. Thank you so much. As you can see, I'm wearing a mask because I'm in a public space. But real quick, so you can actually see what I look like and see a smile. Thank you so much. Hope to see you guys next week. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and most importantly, stay kind. Bye guys.